Hi, I'm Sara Glassberg.
I'm Brad Pilcher.
And this is AJFF in Conversation, the Jewish Film Podcast.
We're recording this the day after the Academy Awards, which capped off an unusual awards season with an appropriately unusual show.
So in addition to sharing our overall reactions to the Oscars, as well as some of the other awards shows that came before it, with a particular eye, of course, toward Jewish nominees and wins, we have a very special treat for you in this episode.
Yeah, Sarah, you got to have a really interesting discussion with one of this year's Jewish nominees just days before the big night. Tomer Shushan, the director of the live-action short nominee White Eye, an Israeli film that we just showed at our 2021 festival.
That's right. And while White Eye, unfortunately, did not take home that prize, this film has really had such an incredible journey to the Oscars. And so Tomer kind of shared some really profound and fascinating insights about that journey, what it's been like, and, you know, the film itself. But before we get to that interview, Brad, what were your overall reactions to the Oscars and this wacky award season?
I mean, it might have been that I was sick. If you can't hear my voice, I'm a little under the weather. But I was underwhelmed by the Oscars. I was underwhelmed by this year's awards season. I don't fault anybody. I don't fault, the Oscars. I don't fault Steven Soderbergh and company who produced it. I think anything you do in a pandemic year is going to be a little compromised. And this year's award show, I think, definitely was that. But I was... I felt like the Oscars in particular had some own goals. They some self-inflicted wounds. I think the choice to try to put the Best Picture film, that award not last, was a gamble. They clearly were expecting Chadwick Boseman to win, and he did not. And the ending was weird. But even before that, I think that the show, it did not benefit from the lack of clips. It did not benefit from the lack of visuals, the lack of a host, the lack of jokes, the lack of that kind of inertia, that sort of entertainment that carries you through. I was befuddled by the fact that they didn't bother to do the best song performances during the show. I know that the show was long, but they just sort of crammed those all into a pre-show, pre-recorded. You could still pre-record them. I just think that the show lacked a certain rhythm, which was unfortunate. And of course, some films, some filmmakers that I was particularly interested in, like Aaron Sorkin, did not have a great night. But by and large, it was I don't fault it. It was an incredible year for people of color, for filmmakers of color. I was very happy to see that. I think in a year that people are going to put an asterisk on, I don't think we should. I don't think we should take anything away from the nominees or the winners, particularly for some of those films that might not have gotten as much attention in a year with other releases that got held up. So for me, it was fine. It was a thing. It happened. I appreciated it. I was much more entertained by watching things like the West Side Story trailer, not the actual shows themselves. I don't know. What did you think?
I'm with you. There were things I really liked about it and things that I really missed. I think you already pointed a lot of them out. I missed clips and visuals. I think to not have those, especially for certain awards like sound and cinematography. I mean, there aren't a lot of people, I would say, who go into this having seen everything. I mean, I'm a huge award season person, and I certainly don't see everything. I missed quite a few films this year. And so having those visuals, having those clips really helps ground some of the... It was a strange choice to me to have the presenters just go on these sort of long-winded descriptions of the performances or of the nominees. It was, so that was kind of weird. I thought the one humorous bit with Lil Rel Howery and pointing out the songs like Purple Rain that didn't get nominated at past Oscars, that came at 10:45 p.m. And I watched the pre-show with the musical performances. Part of me liked that because the show does often run so long, but it still ran long even without those. And I think part of that is that some of these speeches, they did not cut off speeches in the way that they usually do, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, it just felt a little draggy. But I think what's been fascinating to me is just how each telecast has been a little different. I mean, I think the Golden Globes were certainly a bit messy. I think the Oscars really wanted a return to normalcy by saying, masks off when the camera's rolling and things like that, versus Golden Globes having Daniel Kaluuya's speech be muted at the beginning. You sort of trade certain clumsy aspects for others. And as far as the winners, yeah, I definitely think there were other awards that we'll mention, award shows that we'll mention where Jewish nominees were a little bit more represented and won things. But I do think this year was great for diversity. I do think it has to go further. I think that's something that Daniel Kaluuya, in the hours since he won, has been saying. 9 out of the 20 acting nominees were people of color, and we ended up with a split, 2-2. And I don't think anyone was expecting Hopkins to win. Maybe there were some people who were looking at the BAFTAs and predicting that there was going to be an upset, and they really took a gamble with the order of the awards. So I
think they were clumsy all around. I think even what you mentioned when you talk about requiring, masks off. Of course, Frances McDormand was like, "I'm wearing it. I don't care. I'm wearing a mask." But I even that blew up in the classic Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences style. They can't even do that without screwing up. They say they're going to require everybody to be there, not wear, and everyone's like, "Wait a minute, that's not going to work." So there's some pushback. I just think that even that bit that you talked about at 10:45, that came right after they gave the award. It's just the timing was off, the rhythm was off. I'm all for experimentation. I really think that there's a benefit to not assuming that everything has to sort of flow a certain way at an award show. But for me, I never thought I would ever watch the Academy Awards and think, "Wow, I wish they were playing these people off." But there they were, there were some speeches that just went on and on and on. And it did mean that it dragged, and it did mean that it had a bad rhythm. But even that inclusion that you mentioned, was a little bittersweet for the reasons that you mentioned, obviously. I want to take nothing away from Anthony Hopkins. His performance was great, but it was a bit of a surprise. But even, giving Tyler Perry a humanitarian award, I love Tyler Perry. I think his films are underrated. He makes a certain kind of movie. He makes a certain kind of TV show. Clearly, none of those movies or TV shows are ever going to win an actual Oscar. So they give him, this, and that's fine. But it just seemed a little forced and a little bit like, you're not going to give him a real Oscar. You should. I think he actually should be in consideration for some of the technical Oscars, particularly because even though it's clearly not meant to be in the same vein as maybe the makeup or costume or visual effects categories, he does stuff that should be commended and rewarded. Anyways, I just think that ultimately the show failed at its primary purpose, and we forget that it's an award show. But anybody who really thinks that the Academy Awards are actually giving out an award to the best picture, sometimes it actually is, I think, the best picture, but nobody will ever agree that they always get it right. It's an advertisement for Hollywood. It's an advertisement for these films. And for me, what bugged me the most about the lack of clips was, as you say, it took away some of the context for people who hadn't seen these movies. But I don't think that anybody watching this show is going to be like clamoring to go watch Mank if they haven't already, or even Nomadland if they haven't already. And the genesis of the Oscars was a way for them to promote themselves. And that's what the Oscars has always been. And when it's successful at generating energy and enthusiasm around the films and around the act of filmmaking. And at a year where we're going to need people to come back out to the theaters when they're vaccinated, when the theaters reopen, when they can, when they feel comfortable. This was a huge missed opportunity to champion that and to champion the films. It's a little bit of a hard thing to do because so many films have been delayed. So many films that would have come out this year didn't. And so the films that were nominated were not necessarily the films that are going to be mass audience butts and seats films. I get that. But, as producers, I just think they missed their opportunity. I don't know. That's how I look at the Oscars. That's how I look at award season. I don't know how you do.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never really thought about it like that. I will say that I never take the Oscars. And I think a lot of people probably approach it similarly, where yes, it's sort of Hollywood's top prize. I get that. I never take it in and of itself. I watch all of the different awards shows, which is why I think I kind of like seeing the big picture and tracing, who has won across the board, where are some of the, again, kind of upsets or snubs. I'm a huge follower of like the entire season. And so I sort of see the Oscars more as just the last rather than the biggest, even though it is obviously the biggest in the industry. But I will say, before we move on to kind of to looking back at some of the Jewish nominees that have won at some of the other awards, because I, again, do think that's important. I will say that I really think that the Oscars moved a little bit more into the political last night, which I know some people might take issue with. For me, and when I say political, I don't simply mean in terms of social justice and current events. I do think it was a choice to try to have as normal an awards show as possible. And while we are pointing out a lot of the clumsy aspects and missed opportunities, it actually felt kind of nice watching a red carpet and thinking about a future where we are all getting to see these films in theaters. And a lot of the speeches talked about that, try to see Nomadland on the biggest screen and, support these films and filmmakers that way. And so I think that's something that the awards show did succeed with. I don't know how much it was kind of patting their own backs and, trying to move away from what the Golden Globes missteps were with diversity and those kinds of issues. But I think it could definitely go further in the future. But with all the diversification of the membership, in mind, I think that there were some commendable aspects to how they chose to do the awards and, a lot of the winners. But it definitely was, it was a so-so experience for me. It was a mixed bag of emotions. And I think that's to be expected coming on the heels of this really wild awards season where every telecast, again, has been very different. And I do think a lot of the winners we really ought to be celebrating some of the glass ceilings that were shattered last night too. So I'm trying to focus on those positive things, I suppose.
Yes, all praise to Chloe Zhao. I mean, I think you're right on that respect. I will say the Golden Globes set a very low bar for diversity, but for the Jewish nominees, the Golden Globes were probably a more successful night. We mentioned Aaron Sorkin, who won Best Screenplay at the Golden Globes. Sacha Baron Cohen picked up a Golden Globe for his Borat sequel. So, I mean, I think if you're looking for the Jewish nominees, you're probably not going to be looking at the Oscars. Mank is probably the winner of the Jewish film category for the Oscars, when winning in production design and cinematography. But I was, Mank's fine. I was much more impressed by what Sorkin did with Trial of Chicago 7. So I was glad to see them win, both at the Screen Actors Guild and at the Golden Globes. Were there any other big Jewish winners of the award season for you?
Yeah, well, I definitely agree about Trial of Chicago 7. I think that made the most sense for Screen Actors Guild in particular, being the ensemble prize. That's such an ensemble movie. I would say we don't give a lot of attention, unfortunately, to the Independent Spirit Awards. I mean, again, I don't want to generalize too much. Some people who watch all the awards shows definitely do look at that, and it's a nice opportunity to see a lot of super, super independent films be recognized that you don't really see in the Oscars race. But I think this was the first year where they did TV as well as film, if I'm not mistaken. And Shira Haas won for her role in Unorthodox, and her co-star Amit Rahav also won. He played the role of Yankee Shapiro, her husband in the series. And so that was really, really nice to see her recognized. I mean, I haven't personally seen Queen's Gambit, but at a lot of the television awards, Golden Globes and things like that, Anya Taylor-Joy was winning that prize for limited series over Shira Haas. And I like Anya Taylor-Joy. I haven't watched Queen's Gambit yet, but it was just, again, from the Jewish perspective, and having Shira Haas in a Q&A of ours for Asia, which did not make it into the final, nominees for international feature at the Oscars. It was just so nice to see how excited she was and win that award. And so that's one thing I definitely wanted to mention. But yeah, other than that, I mean, it was very cool to see Tomer Shushan in the audience at the Oscars after having just recently been on Zoom with him, and so again, I was rooting for him. I think White Eye is remarkable, and we'll get to that interview in a second. But yeah, that's really all I can think of.
Well, I agree with you. I think Shira Haas winning that award was a highlight of the award season. She was incredibly thankful and enthusiastic, and more people should be watching the Independent Spirit Awards for sure. But, you mentioned Tomer Shushan, and I, for one, am, I've had my fill of the award season. I am actually super excited to hear what you and he talked about. So without further ado, why don't we go and please enjoy this Oscar-nominated interview with filmmaker Tomer Shushan.
Tomer, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today, and congratulations again on your Oscar nomination.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Yes, it's a real pleasure.
I know you must be getting this question a lot, and it's kind of the elephant in the room. I feel like I have to open with this. What is it like to be nominated? When you heard that news, and even now, we're a few days away from the awards when we're recording this. What is going through your mind? What have been the highlights of this experience so far?
I mean, I couldn't really believe that we're going to be in this place right now. I even was not really sure at the beginning to submit it to the Oscar, because I thought that, like, what's the chances, and why to put some hopes and then disappoint. But lots of people around believe in this film and said that it can go all the way. And yeah, I mean, every stage that the film just made it to the short list and made it to the nominees. So it was a shock for me, and I was very surprised and also very, very happy. It's like feelings that I never felt. It's like actually my first film after film school, so I was not prepared to go that far with this film, but I'm super happy to be here, and I'm trying to enjoy the moment, and yeah, I feel very, very grateful.
I think I knew it was your first film, but that is just, it's incredible. But even looking back a little bit at the journey that the film has already been on, I mean, I could see how it ended up right where it is now. I mean, we at AJFF were obviously also very excited when we heard the news. We were proud to screen White Eye as part of our 2021 festival that just passed. And before that, for our listeners who maybe don't know, it won the Haifa International Film Festival Best Short Film Award and South by Southwest Film Festival Grand Jury Prize. So could you maybe reflect a little bit more on the film's sort of festival journey and how that led to, or particularly kind of prepared you for the Oscars journey that you're now on? How have those journeys felt similar or different, just being on that circuit and then deciding to submit it for Oscars and ending up again right where you are now? If you could reflect on that.
So the thing is that when we finalized the film and it was the time to try to send it to festivals, we got negative answers for 1 year from all the big festivals. And I felt that, okay, it's not that good as I thought it's going to, that I thought it's like. And I think I remember that we cut the first 4 minutes. The film was 25 minutes, actually. And we cut the first, we felt that something is not, it's not really good, and maybe it's harming the film. When we did that, we got to Haifa Film Festival and then to South by Southwest, which was the world premiere. We won. I mean, in the first two festivals, we won in both. And South by Southwest was an Oscar qualifying film festival. So our PR that discovered the film in South by Southwest told us that, okay, now you qualify to submit the film to the Oscar. And since then, the film got to more than 100 film festivals in the last year. We just started to submit, and because of the win in South by Southwest, lots of film festivals took the film, and it was a crazy year. 100 film festivals, but we couldn't experience nothing because of COVID, so everything went online. And then just because we were qualified, so we submitted to the Oscars, as I said, and now we're here. I don't know how it happened, but now we're here.
Wow. Okay. So there really is a through line there that, when I wanted to ask you that question, I wasn't sure how those two, again, kind of journeys linked up to each other, but they definitely do. And I'm fascinated by the fact that all happened after you cut the first few minutes. Do you think it's sort of coincidence, or do you feel like that decision strengthened the final product? I'm just so curious what that change was actually.
I think the first 4 minutes it's just long exposition of the film that not really needed, and we felt that we need to start the film from the action that this guy is calling the police. And also back then, after we cut the 4 minutes, all the Black Lives Matter movement started, and I think also the relevance of this film, and also how we improve it by cutting the first 4 minutes. Both of these things helped us to reach out to more people and more film festivals.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Something that struck me about the film, right, is exactly what you just said about kind of you're dropped into the action. It's like my heart was racing from pretty much that opening moment. So it is interesting to hear that there was a earlier version where it started a little differently. And I love that you brought up how timely the film ended up being, because that's something I definitely wanted to talk to you about too. The film's themes around race, immigration, personal responsibility, or the kind of repercussions of our individual actions. I found those to be all really rich, and you really feel them again from that opening moment. You started to touch on this a little bit, but why, in your opinion, is the film seeming to resonate that way? And it seems to be resonating again across hundreds of film festivals as well. So different audiences are, I think, really picking up on all that.
Firstly, the topic that connect to people from all over the world, that they are, I call it see-through people. No one can hear their voices, and the topic now that of they have their voice back, and they can bring it to the screen. I think that's something that I try to create. I was never in a position that I was illegal, or I don't know, in the lower side of the society. And for me, the privilege is to bring their voice to the screen, and to do it from my point of view, because I can never do it from their point of view. And that's something that was very important for me, because this film is based on a true story that happened to me, a real story that happened to me. And it really affected me as a person more than as a filmmaker or anything else. This really changed me and changed the way I live right now, because I was just let my anger control me, and it made me throw away all my values, and I don't want to be that person anymore. And this film, because maybe it can also pop up to few people, and it's also going to change something in others. And I think this is super important, especially in these days that we hear so many stories like that, and it's so sad that it's still happening.
Yeah, I think that's so, the fact that it is sort of based on a true story from your life, it just knowing that, I think I knew that going into my viewing of it, and it just really it makes it so impactful. I mean, I think every person watching it, even if they don't know that, I do think for me, what gave it that universality is that we are often faced with different difficult decisions, and we let our emotions dictate those decisions. And this film was just so thought provoking. I'm just so glad that you decided to tell that story. And to your point about kind of telling other people's stories, the scene where he walks by the freezer, just that image is like going to be burnt into my brain forever. So it brings home a lot of these themes and a lot of these things that we're talking about, at least for me. I should take a second just to briefly explain to listeners, if they haven't seen the film, that in this scene, the film's protagonist passes a walk-in freezer where other immigrant workers are hiding, all huddled together from the police presence that's right outside. So he's really been confronted by the human dimension of the situation that he's created, witnessing the tension and fear caused by his calling the authorities.
You know, when you just mentioned it, you made me emotional, because this film was planned to be in a restaurant, like the real story that happened. But one day I went to visit my friend. He have this butcher shop, butcher factory that you see in the film. And I just went to visit him, and suddenly he just made me a tour in this place. And suddenly he opened the fridge, and I saw all the meat parts. And I just aside, and to few of his workers, which are also coming from Africa. And I just took a picture, and I felt something so strong. I don't want to compare it to the Holocaust, but I really, we grew up watching these films that people hiding because they're afraid, just because they're an identity. I'm saying again, it's very different than the Holocaust. I'm not trying to compare, but this feeling and this image of people who fear to be seen because who they are and how they look like and where they're coming from, connected really hard to what I'm trying to tell in the story. And then I just adjust all the script to this place just because of this image. Yeah, so this film is all about, it's not all about, but it's like surrounding this image that I wanted to create.
Wow, that's it was such a powerful image, and so to hear that you sort of built everything around that, as far as certain decisions that you made, that actually brings up the question I was about to ask you next, which is there were so many fascinating, really beautiful kind of filmmaking choices that you made. I mean, from the one take, which again, that gives you this immersive feeling, and you're in this story, and you're traveling through that space with him, to the casting and the location, like you were just talking about. I mean, everything just felt very intentional and meaningful. So I'd love to hear you talk about some of those choices that you made, and what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced in making this film?
Yeah, I from the beginning, I wanted to be a one shot. And I wanted it not just because I wanted to show off or something, because that's the first impression that people hear you saying, yeah, I want to do it in one shot. And it can sound a bit like too ambitious, especially to a person that it's his first film. And I really wanted to do it because I was there. I felt, I mean, this story is, as I said, it's happened to me. And what I felt is that I'm not taking any moment to stop and to breathe and to understand if my actions are good or wrong. And I think that's what caused this whole mess. Because if I was just stopping for a second and just telling myself, maybe I should like calm down and do something else, like just be myself again, everything were different. And I wanted also the audience will feel the same. So I didn't want the camera will stop, so the audience won't have time to breathe. And when I told everyone that I want to do it, lots of people told me it's not going to work and it's your first time. Don't lose this opportunity for do something that you probably can't do. And I listened to these people. I was listening to them, and I made this film with like different shooting plan and waste half of the money. And then when I went to edit it, I saw it and I thought to myself, oh, not me. This is not what I want to do. Then after spending half of the money that I got from Makor Film Foundation in Israel, I decided to stop the shooting and collect other people that will believe that we can do it in one shot. And after very, very hard and challenging 7 or 8 months, we went doing it with half of the money. We had only one night to shoot it, and we did it in one night. I mean, it was crazy. And what I'm trying to say here is the most important thing that I learned as a filmmaker, because I talked earlier what I learned as a person, as a human being before, because of this story. What I learned as a filmmaker and as an artist, that you can never let your fears control you, and never let other voices to change what your heart telling you. So I'm very happy that at the end I was able to listen to myself and to do it. And yeah, it was very challenging to do it in one shot, but everything is possible if you believe and if you want.
Yeah, and if you are able to kind of surround yourself with the people that support that vision, and it really is such it never felt to me like you were doing it just for the sake of it. It was not simply a visual gimmick. It really did have that effect on me of, I am again right there with this character, and everything just felt like it was happening so fast. And it's exactly how you described. I mean, that very effectively came across. And I think everyone is very excited that you were able to see that vision through, and go make the film that you wanted to make the way you wanted to make it. I think everyone that gets to see this film is the better for it. So my last question is, no matter what happens at the awards, and I know that listeners are going to be listening to this after, we're again recording this just before, this film has clearly had such an impact on me, on the AJFF audiences all over. And it sounds like it took you on a very incredible, important journey as a filmmaker and as a person, from its inception to festivals to this nomination. So, of course, I would like to kind of end our conversation with, what do you have planned next? I know COVID is obviously still impacting a lot of things, but where do you go from here creatively? What are you working on or hope to work on?
I really, really want to continue make films. Storytelling have few ways. There are a few ways to do storytelling, but I feel that my natural place is to make films, and I think that I'm ready for my next challenge, which is going to be a feature film. I have 2 stories that I want to tell, and I plan to continue developing those 2 stories, which already in process. And yeah, I still want to talk about the problems we have in the society and my point of view as a person that seek for equality.
Well, I think I speak for all of us at the festival and our listeners who got to see your film, that we are all so excited to see what you do next. We are all cheering you on and rooting for you at the awards, and obviously hope to keep in touch and see how those next projects come to fruition. But in the meantime, Tomer, thank you again for taking the time to talk with me. Thank you for sharing your vision with the world and for giving us, again, this very relevant, moving, and striking in every way film, White Eye. Thank you again, Tomer, really.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And I really appreciate it.
Until next time, we are your hosts, Sara Glassberg
and Brad Pilcher.
Also producing is Chris Holland, who is our technical director and editor.
Thank you again to our special guest, Tomer Shushan.
The music you have been humming to all show long is by the incomparable Joe Alterman. Please look him up wherever you get your music.
You can always find more from us as well as show notes at ajff.org/inconversation. Our email address is inconversation@ajff.org. Drop us a line with questions, comments we might just answer in future episodes.
Don't forget to subscribe in your podcast app of choice or check out our YouTube channel for new episodes. Give us a rating, a review. Every little bit helps.
We should also mention that we cannot continue to do this podcast or any of our other digital programs without your support. If you're willing and if you're able, please make a donation at ajff.org/inconversation. And of course, please tell your friends about the show. Until next time, goodbye.